Ready? Okay.
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 Hello, and welcome to Dark Alignment. I am Brittney.
And I am Eruca Rose.
And we are a true crime astrology podcast here for you today.
Here for you today.
And every day.
Right in this moment in time.
Whatever
moment of time.
The sound on my phone.
This is for you.
This is for you, wherever you are right now. So the last time that we were here, we covered motherfucking Ted Bundy, y'all. So huge heavy hitter.
MFTB.
What's that mean?
Motherfucking Ted Bundy.
Oh my God, Ted Bundy, Ted Bundles. We covered his ass. He's a piece of shit. So check out episode 8 if you missed that. I can't believe we're almost done with season 2. Like, it's crazy. We're like right at like 2
really
years.
Getting around.
We're getting around the circle of this podcast. This is the circle of life.
Circle of life, circle of the zodiac.
This is exactly right. That's why we always do 12 episodes. But it's just exciting that we've almost had another season. We've had a lot of exciting stuff going on in our lives.
Like we're in my new house right now.
Yes, we are. It's really exciting. Everything about it is perfect too. So I'm so pumped for you. Like everything is so great.
I'm so excited.
We've been really busy. We're getting all settled in both of our lives. We've had a lot kind of going on. We always seem to have a lot going on, but we've had like nothing but huge life changes happening.
New
like,
work and new all these things.
New adventures. I'm done with school, which has been really.
That's a major thing for her. She's been doing that a long time. She's been sacrificing her day-to-day life in extreme ways for this.
And I feel like I have a life again, which has been awesome. Been having lots of fun. And, I feel like we've been doing more podcasty things. We are nailing down the schedule still. We still don't have a full schedule figured out, which
having a house and a place to record will make that much easier.
Yes, it's going to be much easier for us, and we like getting our schedules aligned and knowing, having more predictability in what's going to happen there without.
Because ideally, we'd like to do like once or twice a month, right?
Absolutely, it'd be great to have an episode out to you guys every other week. The research for me is pretty involved, but it's not a problem now that I don't have so many competing things for the time it takes to research for an episode. So. If you want to stay connected to us and know when we put new things out, and make sure that you subscribe, you like, follow. We're on all the platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're absolutely everywhere. And
follow us individually at Britt_Oakley and at Eruca Rose. And when you follow me, you get to hear about new things I'm doing. Like I put out this astrological journal for the month of June.
It's fantastic.
So you get like the weekly view, you get a calendar view, and you have daily.
I love the daily.
The daily. This is what really makes it here. So you have all of the aspects hitting. This is Central Standard Time. And you have space to jot down how you're feeling that day. I've been getting pictures of people writing down what they've been putting in their journals. If you get it now, you can still use it for the last 3 weeks of June.
It's definitely worth it. Like the content, there's so much in there, and it's really impressive.
It's very detailed.
Super proud of you.
Thank
for getting
you.
That out is amazing.
It is available on Amazon, which is the coolest part of all of this, as I am on Amazon.
So exciting.
So get on Amazon. If you want a cheaper ebook version, I do have it on my website that you can buy the download.
Cool.
Get on the DL.
Get on that DL. I personally really like my little book because it's a good size. You can throw it in your bag. You can take it with you, which is nice, and kind of journal throughout the day or write things down as different aspects are hitting. That's the other thing is I want to start time stamping mine and watching it throughout the day. I haven't done that yet, but I think that's gonna be my new thing.
I modeled this after how I like to do my journals and the size of my own journal that I like to do. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. You can check it out. If this does well, I'd really like to do one for the entire year of 2022. Or maybe individual month ones for 2022. I don't know.
Really cool.
So that's what's happening.
So get on board with that. Also, I have started offering readings widely. So I'm doing tarot and energy readings, and then dream interpretations.
Her dream readings are so amazing.
That's my absolute favorite type of reading to do. It's purely intuitive. It's extremely personal, and it's just Absolutely my favorite. I'm very, very passionate about dream readings, and I've been obsessed with dreams kind of my entire life. Very Pisces.
You're a Pisces. So I have two people I will ever ask about my dream stuff, and it is her and then this other person I don't really talk to very much anymore, but both Pisces.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. I've been getting quite a few dream readings, and then I have several close people who constantly give me like so they're like, I've got another
The universe
one.
is really like, you need to be doing dream readings. I've been waiting for her to do it. I'm like, she's gonna do it at some point.
So if you would like to book, you feel free to DM me on Instagram right now. And then working on like web content. I do have all of that in progress right now, so that's exciting. So big things happening for us, which is really awesome.
Very big things.
So I guess we can go ahead and get into the episode.
Yes, we can.
I actually polled about this on the Dark Alignment Instagram story, so we interact a lot there. For those of you who aren't following, like we try to give you good content and like quizzes and
try to make it fun. Instagram is our funnest platform for sure.
I really do think so. But I had polled our listeners, and we got an overwhelming number of responses to this post actually, where I shared a funny meme about Ed Kemper, and it was like, stop making movies about Ted Bundy, you cowards, and do one about Ed Kemper, because he's, pretty intense. And I asked, how familiar are you, or are you familiar at all with the horrendous crimes of Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, or the co-ed butcher? And like 30% of our listeners said no, that they were not familiar, and he is a serial killer. So it's very interesting that he's kind of like less known, I guess.
But the crimes are still so horrific. So.
Which you have not heard yet.
No.
So, this is part of the fun, again, with how, for those of you who are new to the podcast, is Amy Beard, like, rarely knows what we're talking about. Like,
I don't have a lot of background knowledge.
Or, like, remembering the details is kind of, like, some of the bigger ones you
like, I'll know the people's I'd be like, oh, yeah, Ted Bundy obviously sounds familiar, but, like, I don't have, like, a vivid or, like, detailed memory. I'm like, he killed people and did weird stuff to him.
Yeah.
I already forgot.
So, and that happens, sometimes they all run together for me, and that's why I have to try to stay some notes, or, like, sometimes I'll think I remember something, and it'll be about, like, something different. I'm like, wait, no. So, gonna go ahead and tell you my sources for this. I use Wikipedia, like always. Please donate if you use Wikipedia, like, please contribute. There are so many YouTube documentaries. I watched, I think, 8 different ones. The best one was called Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer. So it was kind of hard to record all my sources, because one of the things that I've started doing now that I have time is, as I'm writing, I start like watching documentary after documentary. So I go ahead and do like my formal research, and then I sit down with my laptop and just continue to modify and like add in details of anything I didn't pick up. Perfect. So I'm getting like a lot more in depth with the information.
It looks very dense. Your notes look
really very dense today. So claim to fame, like how you may know of him, if you do. His name is full name. Edmund Emil Kemper III.
Emil is a really interesting middle name.
It really is. It's kind of fancy.
E-M-I-L.
Yep. That is it. E-E-K. So his initials were Eek. Which, yes, valid. Yeah. So he's an American serial killer, a rapist, a cannibal, and a necrophile. He murdered 10 people in total, including both of his maternal grandparents and his own biological mother.
Wow.
Another extremely notable call out about him is his size. He was 6'9".
That's so funny. We were looking at height on our Patreon video.
Yep.
Wow.
Speaking of Patreon, we've got great content on there. So extra fun stuff if you
totally support us on Patreon if you want to. And we do extra fun videos.
Yep, we do great stuff on there. We love our Patreon people. So thank you all for supporting us. And if you want to support us for free, you can like and subscribe and do all that. So we appreciate all of you no matter what.
I feel like if we get a good amount of patrons, we could even list them at the end of the episode.
Like, give them shout outs like in the credits.
We would love to give shout outs if we let's hit like 25.
25.
We'll start doing shout outs.
Okay, we'll do shout outs at 25, and you guys will be like essentially producers of this show. So,
we won't even call them patrons. We'll call them producers.
I like it.
Executives?
Executive producers.
You know, like when you work at like Starbucks and they're like, oh, you're a partner.
Wait, what? I do not fucking know that.
At Cabela's, they called us outfitters, and they said we were born to work there.
born
to work there. We had buttons, like pins on our clothes that said born to work here.
Oh, did people ask you if it was legit? Were people like, were you born to work here, or are you?
I mean, I guess, do you believe in destiny? I don't know.
Did anybody call you on it and say, like, were you born to work here? Because that's funny.
Anyways.
So again, he's 6'9", so he's huge. And he was described by everyone as a gentle giant. And
what?
I did confirm this. We actually had a listener reach out when I posted my thing again about Ed Kemper. And she was like, yeah, I know who he is. And then she sent a message to us and said she actually worked in the prison where he still is right now.
Whoa.
Because he is alive still.
That's crazy.
Yes, and I asked a lot of questions.
She said she had a connection, but she didn't tell me about it.
Shout out to Alice Q. Thank you so much for reaching out, friend of the podcast. We love these hot tips. But she told me that like he absolutely was very quiet, very gentle giant. He's actually in a wheelchair now, she said. But, you know, there wasn't a lot of time for her to, like, do any digging, but I was asking, like, what does he get in commissary? I was like, can you tell me? So, Alice, if you're listening, like, anytime if you have information to drop, she actually gave me some other cool info on some other killers that I want to put on my list, too. So, we always appreciate the interaction, so thank you so much for that. I thought it was really cool to, like, to have somebody say, like, yeah, I've been around him and, like, experienced it in person. It's really wild.
Crazy.
And similar to Ted Bundy, he was extremely intelligent. He had an IQ of 145. Has an IQ of 145. I need to stop saying past tense because he is.
He's not dead.
And then he was known throughout the media as the co-ed killer and the co-ed butcher. There are several books and movies about his crime. He's a pretty heavy hitter for somebody who, like, people don't know a ton about. So we're going to go ahead and get into his young life because it's pretty interesting. Being large, like, he was always very large. He weighed 13 pounds when he was born. Whoa. So he, that's huge for a newborn.
Yeah, giant.
Right. And he was the middle child. He had 2 sisters. His parents were extremely strict, very much authoritarian parenting style going on. And he was at least a foot taller than all the other kids by the time he was 4 years old. So he's towering over his peers. That can make it really tough for kids because then when they're already feeling different at such a young age, that does affect development. So he also had a really dysfunctional relationship with his mother. She was described as neurotic, domineering, and an alcoholic. She belittled him verbally. She humiliated him a lot. She was abusive to him. And his parents ended up getting a divorce when he was 9. So that's a really hard age. Like, that's like 4th grade. I feel like that's a tough age for any kid for your parents to get a divorce because it's just like kind of your whole world crumbles, essentially. And he was extremely upset about this because he ended up getting stuck living with his mom. So he had to move to Montana. And I think he was born in California. And he had to move to Montana. Yeah, he was living in Burbank, California. So that's a really far move, too. That's very uprooted. This is a lot of change. And his mom kind of hated him.
Yeah, definitely see that.
Okay, so she made him sleep in a locked basement.
What?
She thought that he was going to do something to, like, sexually hurt his sisters, which is really interesting that she was... It makes me wonder, like, was she...
Is she picking up on something, or is she putting that on him? Yeah.
That's exactly it. Like, was it a major contributor to what happens later, or was it, like, she was feeling something? It might be a little bit of both. But a thing, all he had down there was, like, a mattress and a light bulb, and he could, like, hear the rats running through at night, and that it was really scary time for him. That he was very
Prison
afraid.
probably seems better in perspective, doesn't it?
Probably so. It was a very scary time, for him as a young boy. Like, that's awful to think about. And his mom also mocked him for his size. Didn't show him any affection because she thought he was going to be gay. She told him that he reminded him of his father and that no woman would ever love him. Like, she called him a monster. This is clearly going really great.
Oh my God.
He also had a few near-death experiences as a child. So that's a really extreme trauma. His older sister tried to push him in front of a train one time. And then another time she successfully pushed him in the deep end of the pool and he nearly drowned. So his mom like hated him, and it kind of seems like it translated and was passed down to like the other females in his household. So you can feel this like
yeah, of course. And that's how the daughters learn to treat their brother.
Right.
Yeah.
And probably
the
their
mom is
future
an example.
husbands.
Yeah, probably most male figures. Yeah.
Right. So that's really rough to have that. And then because of his size, his mom was afraid of him. And so she like just was real verbally abusive, like constantly making fun of him and saying like, no one's going to love you. She was really cold, really distant. His father was completely absent after the divorce. So there's a lot of like really, really bad shit going on here. So yeah, it's not going so great. And then a little criminology kind of sidebar here. Peer rejection is actually one of the strongest predictors of antisocial behavior. And it's when it's combined with other risk factors like abuse during those early years, like those peer relationships are critical. And when kids struggle with this, it just continues to set them up for failure. They're not learning those critical social skills or how to build or maintain relationships. Social skills, again, are critical to be accepted by peers. So when you're like bad at that, you come off weird, awkward. And the kids will reject somebody who comes off that way, or kids who are aggressive often get rejected, or they're like disruptive, you know, so you see like that with like very common with ADHD, like that can be a thing where like kids don't want to be friends because it's causing problems, causing disruptions. Just like generally being different, it causes children to be labeled as outcasts. So then being tall, like physically different, this is just really, really hard, and moving and uprooting. So these are some big risk factors for any type of criminology, like criminological stuff going on here. And then being ignored by his caretakers and abused, like it's just not going great. And relating to other people can be very challenging. And then it also means like you're not picking up on social cues when you're not getting that interaction. So even his own sisters were bullying him. So he didn't really have anybody close to him. It's just a really bad combo. So bad times ahead.
It looks like it.
He starts showing some pretty significant signs of antisocial behavior. It starts with his sister's dolls. He used to cut the heads off of their dolls and kind of was displaying some violent emotions going on. His favorite childhood game was called Gas Chamber. Another one was called Electric Chair. So he would ask his younger sister to tie him up and like flip an imaginary switch, and then he would like flop around in the floor and pretend to die. So it's pretty fucking dark. This is disturbing. So trigger warning. I needed to already say that, but trigger warning. We're about to get into some more of like harming animals and stuff that's very upsetting. So at the age of 10, he buried a cat alive, and then he dug it up and decapitated it, put its head on a spike, like to play with. He later said he got pleasure from successfully lying to his family about killing the cat. So like keeping the secret was like a thing he was kind of getting off on, and getting away with it was like a thrill to him. So he's still 10 years old. Like this is very young. This is like a year after they moved when this started getting like escalating a whole lot after the divorce. He made comments about like killing his teacher if he ever had to kiss her. This is just like basic things he's saying to other children. So the language, the way he's speaking, and that's his social skills right there. Like very strange, very red flag. He was having a lot of violent fantasies. He was starting to act on them. So around the age of 13, he killed another family cat. He thought it favored his little sister over him. He kept the pieces of it in his closet, and his mom found them, which she already fucking hated him, so that was horrible. And it just keeps getting worse. He's still not fitting in. He's just keeps getting taller and more isolated. He didn't really have any friends. The rejection he felt from his father was really intense as well after the divorce. Just too many things at once. A lot of isolation. It's just making it worse. And all he had in the basement was a cot and a sleeping bag and a light bulb on a string. So, not good. So we're going to go ahead and jump to his first kill. So, As a teenager, he left home. He ran away to Los Angeles to find his father. So he goes back to California. He finds him, and his dad totally rejects him.
Whoa.
So he ends up living with his grandparents on a farm there. So in theory, this is sounding okay. You know, you think of like grandparents are probably going to be a little bit more stable, a little bit more calm.
Not for him, right?
But no, he hated his grandma because he said she was just like his mom. So
okay.
I think it was more that he hated women. But he shot her. He decided to shoot her. Which is, he was 15. And he just wanted to see what it would be like to kill his grandma. So this is really cold-blooded. And he doesn't stop there. He killed his grandpa too because he wanted to spare him of finding his dead wife. So he's like, thinks he's doing him a favor. So this is some pretty fucking flawed logic. Also, at this time, he's diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic and he's hospitalized after all of this. So he's just committed a double homicide of his grandparents, which is, that's insane to think about. And just the motivation behind killing his grandfather is pretty fucked up. He's like, oh, I'll just do him a quick favor, just put him out of his misery. Like, that is...
Wow.
And that sounds about like 15-year-old logic to me, in a very, like, dark way.
15?
Yeah, he was 15.
Oh, I missed that.
15 years old when this happened. So, he's already killed 2 people.
Wow.
He's put in a state hospital, like, for the criminally insane, so it's not like a rehab mental health facility where people go to, like, seek treatment voluntarily. It's like... The hospitals for the criminally insane, actually, my dad lived next to the state hospital in Oklahoma growing up. And there's some weird shit that happened there. I should talk about that on Patreon sometimes. I've seen some shit I've seen people escape from it and get, like, caught in the streets. It's wild.
Whoa.
Good times. Shout out, Dad. It's no longer... At first it was an insane asylum, and then they made it a state hospital.
Wow.
For criminally insane. And I think it's closed down now.
But I think most of those places are.
This was...
No, right?
Really?
No,
state hospitals for...
Oh, no, I meant like...
No, the asylum type places, yes, but they've converted...
But they're just kind of like a new and improved kind of form of the...
It's not that you're... Like,
not new and improved, but...
No, it's different because... What happened is, like, during Reagan administration, they just released very mentally ill people in the streets. These are criminals.
Yeah.
The people that were there in, like, the mental health aspect,
it's all been reformed differently, different structures.
We're throwing out
it's the criminals now.
We're not just going to treat people.
We're not going to do this to just everybody.
Right. We're going to only keep violent, mentally ill criminals here. So, yeah, that's what's going on there. So, it's not like a nice rehab. It's probably not very conducive to...
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear anything of him, like, speaking?
Oh, yeah. Watched interviews with him and stuff.
Yeah. What was he like speaking?
So I'm going to
theories.
So I'm going to kind of get into this later, which is really interesting.
Well, wait. I'll be patient.
I'll go ahead and talk about it a little bit because people really liked him. He was very well liked by people.
Right. I'm
very
trying to figure
personable.
this out.
He was described as having a great personality, gentle giant, kind of a quiet guy. Again, gentle. And I think that's something that he had to do because of his size. I think it was like he had to find a way to, like, make it, to tone it down. And he didn't start doing that until adulthood. So in adulthood, he actually was close friends with the police officers and always wanted to be a cop. And, like, the officers really liked him, and he hung out in the places where they...
His Mercury placement's just very interesting. Go ahead.
Okay. So also, and again, he's 15. He's diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic. And that is not a common diagnosis for younger people. In males, it can onset, like, earlier, but you typically don't see that start to develop until like the early 20s, early to mid 20s for most people, just with the nature of it. So to have it onsetting so early is pretty intense. So it just tells me it's like a lot more severe.
Very severe.
Yeah, to have that early diagnosis. So again, like, he's very intelligent. He's not dumb at all. Like, he's manipulative with adults. And in lots of interviews that I watched, he was very well spoken. People, again, really liked him. They said he was a model patient. He was trusted to have different administrative tasks while he was there, so he was like responsible. He had access to the hospital's psychological test papers and the files of the other patients.
Wow.
And then he was released on his 21st birthday, so 6 years after murdering both of his grandparents. He's released. They're like, he's fine. Like, we got it. He's good, right? Like, and guess what happens when he leaves? He goes to live with his favorite person.
Really?
His mother.
Really?
Yes. You better fucking believe it.
Wow.
The police actually didn't want that to happen.
They knew not that it wouldn't be good?
It was very stupid. Like, they were like, this should not happen. But that is exactly what happened. His record was also expunged. So he got to walk away like nothing happened after killing 2 people.
Wow.
Yep. So he's out on the streets. No longer institutionalized. He's doing stuff. He convinced psychiatrists that he was rehabilitated. He's good to go. And he had a lot of people convinced that he was doing well. So he started going to community college. He seemed pretty well adjusted. Again, people liked him at this point in his life. Even his surviving victims described him as being like non-threatening at first. That he just seemed really, even though he was huge and that would have been physically threatening, you know, to be in the presence of someone 6'9" is very large. Like, I don't know anybody that tall. Like, that is very intimidating. To be somebody who's over a foot taller than like the average person. That's male or female. It's crazy. So it's just really interesting that he came off as being a really nice guy with such a great personality. The cops loved him, like I mentioned, but he was awkward around women. That's something that's very known. And the bar he hung out is called the jury room. That's where all the local cops were when they got off shift, and that was his favorite place. Like, he liked to be around police officers and thought they were, like, again, he admired them and wanted to be one. They called him Big Ed. They, like, chatted it up with him, drank beers with him. Like, this was all he just was this very seemingly normal guy.
Dang.
And the reason he couldn't be a cop is he exceeded the maximum height limit. So if you're super tall, you can't be a cop, apparently.
What?
I didn't know that. But
that's crazy. I mean, I knew there was for like some like military positions, like if you have to be on a plane.
Oh,
or
okay.
If you have
but
to
it's like for
like,
logical reasons.
Yeah, but like
I don't know what it is about police officers. That's fascinating though. But he actually ended up getting a job with Highway Patrol instead. And his relationship with his mom was not good. Neighbors reportedly heard them arguing a lot. He could never really get away from her either. Like, so when he moved, she would like come visit unannounced and shit. So she like, even when he did try to like not live with her, like she still would be kind of overbearing,
still around,
invasive, yeah. So more bad times. Where it's not going to get better. I don't know what y'all expect from me. So it's 1972. It's hippie times. It's like free love. And it's just hanging out, seeming pretty normal. And then young girls start going missing from the Santa Cruz College campus.
Of course.
And body parts are washing up on this shore. And they're, oh God, okay, trigger warning. There are dismembered heads specifically, plural, yes, more than one head, washing up. They're starting to turn up in like wooded areas, mountainous areas. Ed's just being all nice to everybody. He finally developed these like social skills, but really like only with men. He had this obvious fascination with the police. With women, though, he like felt really, really inadequate. He wanted to connect with them, but just felt like he couldn't for whatever reason. Probably hearing his mom's voice in his head every time.
Yeah.
If I can like think about like the schizophrenia and kind of probably like what those like he probably had auditory hallucinations going on where he's hearing majorly probably his mother's voice, like, you know, in that time, in that moment.
For sure.
Very, very negative self-image that was created by his mom and his sisters in childhood. So it's like kind of reinforced by his interactions with women every time. And he ends up targeting young female hitchhikers during his killings. He lured them into his vehicle by offering them a ride. Hitchhiking, again, was very popular back then. And he would drive them to secluded areas, murder them, take their bodies back to his house, again, where he lived with his mother, to be decapitated, dismembered, and sexually violated. Wow. And the thing is, he rehearsed this for a long time before he actually acted on it.
Practice.
Yeah, he practiced a lot picking up hitchhikers, so he got very comfortable before he actually started killing them. And he would do this thing where he would, like, say, oh, your door's not closed. And he had very long arms, so he would reach over them and open the door, and he would drop a chapstick down in it to, like, fuck with the locking mechanism, and then close the door so they couldn't.
That is
out.
So.
So he had a.
So detail oriented.
He had a really, he had practiced a lot. Like he was doing that before he was killing. So, and also buckle the fuck up, because he always had oral sex with his decapitated heads. He did not see them as people. He saw them as objects. So he, could do whatever he wanted with them once he had taken their lives. He bound and strangled his victims pretty often. It was very personal in his attacks. Lots of sexual contact with the bodies. Post-mortem. It's horrific. A lot of this is about power too. This is very extreme sexual pathology. It's one of his victims. He actually buried her head outside of his bedroom window. I heard it both ways. I heard in some situations that it was facing his window, and then in others I heard it was facing his mom's. Either way, it seems like the door, like his mom's room. There was something really specific about the direction that the head was facing, and I've heard conflicting accounts of which direction.
But there's that's an important piece.
Yeah, but he would, like, dig her up and rebury her. And then, like, he took most of his victims to other locations to discard, their body parts. But it actually happened so often that hitchhiking was made illegal at this time, and people were really terrified, but obviously they were still doing it. They thought that, like, the ban on hitchhiking was an infringement on their rights at the time. This is very much, again, hippie times, where they're like, you can't fucking come down on me, man can't tell me what to do. Like, it was very much that type of energy, and it was Age of Aquarius energy, big time going on here. And so, so people were still hitchhiking, but really the whole goal was to try to keep them alive and not infringe on their rights, but it's a slippery slope sometimes. So now, the beginning of the end. He's killed at least 6 women at this point, plus his grandparents, so 8 total victims. No one suspected him at all. And at this point, Ed decides he's going to buy a gun. And this prompted a routine check of his history and criminal background. And this is how the police found out that their friend, Big Ed, had murdered his grandparents when he was 15.
Yeah.
So they had to actually stop by his house to get the gun. And I saw interviews with the officer that made that trip to the house. And he said he didn't know which apartment was Ed's, because they all had the same address, but like letters and stuff. So he wasn't sure. And he saw a car pull in, and then he went to approach the vehicle to say, like, just ask, do you know where Ed Kemper lives? And he's like, when he got out of the car, I knew it was him, because he towered over me. So the cop talks about how intimidating it was to inquire about this gun.
Wow.
Just pulling up there, just being
to
like,
ask, like,
fuck, So they went by, got the gun, Ed had to hand it over or whatever, and it made him really paranoid because he thought the cops were onto him. They definitely weren't at this point, but he starts to get paranoid, and so they still didn't consider him any sort of suspect. They had to go to his mom's house to get the gun, and all of this. So it was in the trunk of his car. They just took it and left, and they didn't think any more about it. Then 2 weeks later, around 5 a.m., a call came in to the station from Ed, from a phone booth in Colorado. And on this call, he confesses that he killed his mom and her friend, and that they were at the house. He gave the cops directions how to get there, and that's when they found the 2 victims in a closet. He confessed to all of the co-ed killings. He gave police, full confession. And at the scene where his mother was, he wrote a note and apologizing for the mess and said he didn't have time to clean it up. So all the people that he killed, too, was in a really fairly short time span. It was over an 11-month period. That's very close together.
Well, aside from the grandparents, right?
Right. He killed the 2 grandparents when he was 15, and then I think he's 21, 22. He's in his early 20s at this point, because he got out on his 21st birthday, and then I'm not losing track of numbers and time, as usual. But he's in his early 20s, but he kills 8 people in 11 months. It's a lot. That's a really close together. And the grand finale, of course, his mother. So, mommy issues as fuck. Before the murder, he had made the mental connection himself that every time he was killing a female victim, that he was like taking out his revenge and like symbolically killing his mom. So he was aware of this. That's why he figured the only way to make it all stop was to just kill his mom. So this was his solution for like, how do I end this? How do I make this no longer a thing? I've got to just kill her. And he'd been fantasizing about it for so long. So, and the police just definitely were not prepared for all the fucked up shit at the scene. And again, trigger warning, this is very fucked up. So, his weapon was a hammer. Very, very violent. Very, very messy. That's not an easy way to kill somebody. It's not an easy way to go. And then he decapitates her. He does his usual oral sex gross things that I don't want to think about with his mother's head. He reportedly screamed at her head for some time as well. I guess he put her head on the mantle and like threw darts at it. He cut out her vocal cords and tried to put them down the garbage disposal. He's a fucking madman. Like, the amount of rage going on here is very disturbing. And then after this, he decides to invite over his mom's best friend.
Of course. Yeah.
And then he murders her too. And then he puts them in the closets and then leaves. I don't understand why he did this with the friend.
I'm assuming the friend backed her up and was around, and I could picture her making fun of the son with her friend, like in the kitchen, they're hanging out, talking shit about the son.
The other thing too is that it might be a little bit like his grandfather, where he was like, maybe I want to spare her from finding my mom. That might be part of it too, because he did what he kind of feels like a courtesy killing too, like that this friend would be the one to find her, and maybe he didn't want her. That's a lot of his motive too. So
I could see that.
That could be possible. I do feel like it was probably what you said.
Probably a
it
mixture
could be a little
of
bit
things.
Of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during the trial, they played his taped confession. So it was obvious he's very guilty.
Like all these girls ganging up on him, really.
I mean.
Anyways. Tape confession.
He's found guilty on 8 counts of first-degree murder. And at the time of the crimes, he was 24 at the time of the crimes. And he reportedly asked for the death penalty. He requested, specifically, death by torture, which isn't a thing, but he totally asked for it. Instead, he received 7 years to life for each count to be served concurrently, so at the same time instead of one after another. And then he was sentenced to be in the California Medical Facility, so again, like a state hospital. So interviews with him, the police said that he openly talked about all of his crimes in vivid detail. Once he was in custody, he had no problem telling them exactly what he did and recounting the entire thing. And usually you have killers that are one or the other. Like, they're going to really talk about their crimes, or they don't say a word.
Yeah.
So he really wanted to talk, which is just fascinating. So yeah, I'm interested to see his Mercury placement, especially after you made a comment about it. He explains again that he practiced for months on the different hitchhikers, and that made him feel really confident. He did the whole chapstick thing. The passenger had no idea what was going on. It was just really, really premeditated. And then this is really interesting. In one of the documentaries, I saw a female psychologist say that she's one of the only people to report seeing a violent side of him in person, where she saw beyond this like gentle giant thing. She was alone in the interview room.
She triggered him with her female self.
And something that she said, like, made him erupt. She said he, like, growled and got up and, like, lunged towards her. And so she fucking jumped back, and the guards rushed in, and that he was just, like, fury. He was just, like, full of rage. And, again, she thinks it's because she was asking him questions about the women, and she was a woman. Because male interviewers said that he was never like that. He was never intimidating. He was really, again,
she triggered him.
Yeah. So the only reason he ever gave for his crimes was that he liked control. He didn't show any remorse. And again, he didn't see women as people. So that's probably why. So prison life, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. I know we mentioned a few things earlier from our friend of the podcast, Alice. So he is still in prison. He's alive and being a bitch somewhere. He was denied parole several times. He's going to be eligible again in 2024. Don't let this fuck out. I don't think they will. He's considered to be a model prisoner. The parole board has still repeatedly told him to go fuck himself, which is great. And then some of his jail activities are interesting. He was the coordinator of the prisons program, whatever that is. He spent, oh my god, this is fucking crazy. He personally spent over 5,000 hours narrating books with hundreds of completed recordings.
Oh my god.
Which is just gross. Can you imagine getting a book on tape and then finding out it's a fucking serial killer reading it to you? Apparently he had to step down from all of his big responsibilities in 2015 because he had a stroke. But when he was in his prime, he was even in charge of scheduling other inmates' appointments with psychiatrists. And he was an accomplished craftsman of ceramic cups, prison crafts. But the control thing, thinking of him doing schedules and being in charge of so much, they're like feeding that side of him that loves control, and it's gross, and I don't like it.
Making use of it.
Do what?
Making use of it.
Yeah, I guess so, but I still don't like it because like he's getting off on it. So his crafts, I guess he was really impressive at pottery, and I did see some of it in a documentary, and it was pretty good. I was like, oh, okay. He made this cup that was really beautiful. It was like really abstract, and on the side of it said, "I beg your pardon," and on the bottom it said, "I never promised you a rose garden." And it supposedly took him an entire year to make it, and he sent it to his favorite psychologist, and this gentleman said he feels like it was Ed's way of apologizing. But we don't fucking care. Fuck this guy. Let's chart this bitch.
Alright, everyone. It is time to chart the bitch.
Ed Kemper.
Alright. So, what do we want to start with? Do you want to guess any of the signs?
Okay. So, I do know that his sun is Sagittarius, because we talked about that. Because I knew his birthday and wasn't sure, because it's December 18th. So, I was like, is that Sag or Cap? I was like, he's kind of in that area that I don't quite know.
He is a Sagittarius sun sign.
Okay, I feel like he probably has kind of an introverted moon, maybe. But then also I feel like maybe it's a rageful one, but it does feel introverted. Like, could it be something like a Capricorn?
You're on track, but that is not Capricorn moon.
Okay, I'm like an introverted moon. I don't really know what that is to me. Tell me.
Okay, so it's funny because he has a Leo moon in the 12th house with a bunch of squares on it. So it's very like that polarity, like you said, like it's introverted and like hard and like cold, but also aggressive and fiery and expressive. So
because I love Leo moons. That's my favorite moon placement ever for anyone.
And having it in the 12th house makes it like your emotional prison. It's caged. In the 12th house, it's also stuck in fantasy. It's also gets 12th house. It's very self-limiting. It can make it feel like your emotions don't mean anything. It shows a lot of maternal issues just alone right there.
Okay.
He also has Pluto and Ceres here in this place, in this house and sign. So keep that in mind as well.
Okay, and then for rising, let me think, because we do have birth time, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. 11:04 p.m. Born on December 18th, 1948, in Burbank, California.
So for a rising sign, it's weird that he was like, okay, so he came off great with men and weird with women. So I'm wondering if this is Aquarius energy that's maybe a little bit misunderstood, or an air sign. I don't know. What is it?
I think we already talked about this, actually. You already forgot.
Oh, that probably.
I think we talked about it earlier when you got here. So think about the detail-oriented stuff.
Virgo?
Yeah.
Really?
Virgo rising.
I don't think we talked about him.
We did. Well, maybe we did, because I said Virgo
sun.
rising, and then you were like, "Oh, I got all these placements."
But also, we did.
We did all these other
stuff.
people right after.
We did celebrity stuff, and like all of them were Virgos.
I was like, she definitely forgot. But that's fine.
It got blended in with all the other things. The way I am with these charts is kind of how you might be with like the serial killers. And
yes,
like,
exactly.
All the details. It's.
Like, this gets out really clear cut for me, where,
Virgo,
like, for you it's the other
Yeah,
side.
Virgo is interesting rising for him. That's okay.
Isn't it, though?
Okay.
And what's really interesting with his rising is right after his rising, he has Saturn stationary. So, like, during the retrograde cycle, there's these, like, in-between periods of direct and retrograde that are stationary. Like, it looks like they're not moving. So, yeah, he has Saturn right there. Saturn is the first thing and the only thing in his first house in Virgo. And he does have an interception on his chart. So he has the first and second house ruled by Virgo. And he has the 7th and 8th house ruled by Pisces. So there's already a lot of Virgo and Pisces energy hitting his chart, that polarity.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that polarity.
Yes.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
And he has Gemini and Sagittarius not ruling any houses if you're using Placidus system. So his sun being in Sagittarius also makes it where like he's always looking for that Sagittarius and Gemini energy in his life. It's not ruling an area of his life where it like traditionally should be. So he's looking for it. So he's also looking for anything that are in those signs in his chart. So he's looking for himself in a way. He's looking. His Chiron is in Sagittarius. He's looking at that trauma in his life and healing. He's in like an active type of search for that. It's like something that kind of like weighs on the psyche throughout your life. Also, Uranus in Gemini retrograde. That individualism and like eccentric elements to your personality and being able to like be part of a group, like the collective, especially on like this is in his 10th house, especially on like a big scale, like a grand scale, and Gemini energy with like the social mentality and stuff like that.
Okay. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, there's so much on this chart, really.
You talked about his Mercury being in an interesting place. I'm
we
really
can go ahead and
to
get into
hear
that.
That's what I'm most interested to hear about because you mentioned it a couple of times.
I usually don't interrupt you and ask stuff, so.
I like it when you do. That's fun. I like it when you ask questions. Because then it makes me excited to see like why is she asking this? What is she seeing?
Well, I mean, really, it's really nice sitting here and looking at the chart. Like, I recommend this to the viewers. Like, if you can pull up the charts for these people and just listen to Brittney's story, like you can just see all the energies on the charts playing out as she's talking. It's really cool. Like all these situations that come up, I can't always remember all of them that you say.
You do a great
by the time
job
I get to I try to the notes help. I'll be like, oh yeah, that is how that dynamic would play out because of his chart. Like, it's just really interesting. For example, there was something, let's see if I can. there's this like square, you mentioned like he went to see the grandparents, right?
Oh.
And so like grandfather is very Saturn. And so you have his Saturn placement is very like a huge part of his chart, with being the first thing on his chart. And there's a square over to this Venus Chiron situation in the 4th house, which has to do with like his trauma and his like sisters. It ties into like his home life, his early life, maternal energy, all of that stuff. His like love and sense of values and self-worth, and and worth in general. And then there's this big square over to his 7th house, and it makes this big grand square with his palace and retrograde. And I know this is kind of like jumbled now that I've gotten to this point, but but when you hear like a situation comes up in life, it's going to trigger these energies on your chart. They I kind of picture it as like lighting them up. So he goes to visit his grandparents. There's a trigger with Saturn. And it has to do with his identity, right? Because he's not usually with his grandparents.
Right. This is
so like him facing them, hoping that they are going to accept him for his identity. He already has this issue with his first house.
By his father.
Right. First house. There's a lot of rejection and like restriction with him and his identity. And so it's lighting up the first house, it's lighting up Saturn, and that lights up the squares on Saturn. And there's a big square over that 7th house, which has to do with like his relationships with other people, especially like one-on-one relationships. Like a grandparent relationship could be like a one-on-one relationship. You're not dealing with like a group of people. You're not dealing with a collective of people, like with like the 3rd or the 11th house. This is like a one-on-one dynamic, and so this is obviously going to be conflicting energy with this grand square hitting. And then along with that, Lilith being in Pisces in his 7th house, he's going to like see that conflict, and he's going to fight it with self-empowerment. And I really see a lot of trends on his chart. I wasn't going to say this till like the end, but I see a lot of trends on his chart where he uses this self-empowerment through fantasy and like escapism. Okay. But then at the act of actually doing something, he has Mars and Jupiter and Mercury and Pholus and his vertex all in Capricorn. He has a Virgo rising, Saturn in Virgo. He has a North Node in Taurus, Pallas retrograde in Taurus, midheaven in Taurus. There's like these strong Earth energies coming in. And so, actually acting on that, with Jupiter and Mars there, like Mars makes things into an action, especially in an Earth sign. It makes it like an actuality, physical plane action. Okay. And Jupiter brings growth and expansion, and like which can be like positive or negative, really. It's like a magnifying glass. It lets you take steps further. So for him to take steps further, he's got to really take kind of action on things. And anyway, I think he goes off on the fantasy, and then when he takes action on it, it's almost grounding for him. So he can, I think. So
that is crazy.
So it's like a buildup of the, this like the schizophrenia, like all of it starts with the mother female stuff. Like when you look at the psychology of his chart, I think it starts with that 12th house issue and the Saturn first house issues, and then as his life played out, you can see a lot happening in the 3rd and 4th house. Also, his Neptune is in Libra in the 2nd house, which I'm going to talk about that later, which has to do with like all illusions, and it can have to do with like your perspective on life and the world, your worldviews, and usually I'll look at Neptune with schizophrenia.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So and like Pisces stuff and like all of that. So there's basically like he gets into the fantasy as a coping thing, and then and like it's escapist, and then when he actually acts on it, it's like, oh, now I'm like grounded, I'm back in the world, like I'm back on
that's a creepy that's a creepy thing to think about.
Yeah, you can kind of like see it play out with the aspects.
He grounds himself by acting on his like really fucked up violent fantasies.
It's kind of like if you can like feel yourself like get really worked up over something, and then maybe you take it a little too far and you do something about it, and then you're like, whoa, that was too much. Like, and but it's almost like more of a satisfaction with him.
He's
at
like,
the same
that was
time.
just enough.
Like that was it. But also, I think personally, he has a little bit of guilt over the things he's done. But I don't know, like when he's in the fantasy, he doesn't. Like I think when he's grounded, he has guilt. But when he's not triggered, I think he has a little bit of guilt. Because
well, he was self-aware enough to make the connection that he was doing this all like as a symbolic act against his like rage. He made that connection himself that like, okay, I'm just killing my mother a bunch of times.
Yeah.
When he killed his grandmother the first time, she reminded him of his mother.
Yeah.
Like it's just that was the theme. So he was at least self-aware enough to recognize his motivations, his own self, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think so. He's smart, like we said, and let me get into Mercury now. He has Mercury in Capricorn. It's in his 4th house, right at the end of it. If you're using Plastus, if you're using whole house, it'd be in the 5th. But you've got, it's an intelligent, goal-oriented, responsible mindset to have. It also makes it where you're going to talk about your goals and achievements, and you have a mindset to like achieve big things. You're taking steps towards like climbing a whole mountain type of thing. Okay. And he's got it conjunct his sun sign, and it's conjunct Jupiter. So there's a lot of really strong, powerful sense of self energies right there, like tied into it. He has a grand trine on his Mercury, which is what like the main thing that made me think like, oh, I want to ask, because it's also the gentle giant thing and how you said he was quiet, like that kind of stoic energy of Capricorn can come through, but also gentle because it's the 4th house. I mean, if you're on my classes, it's the 4th house, which is like very maternal, like home type feelings. It's very nurturing type energy. That it's I should really reverse that. Like his like speech and mindset comes through this nurturing area of his life, of his mind.
Okay. So it comes across.
And same with his sun sign, and he has and he has Chiron here too. So it's almost like I'm trying to think of the right word to mix those together, but it brings that gentle element to this for sure, and how he comes across, but also kind of quiet, a little more reserved. If he had like a bunch of Gemini placements, it would be very different.
Okay, yeah.
Like
he came across as very non-threatening, is what people said, and he was like a rule follower, which does feel very Virgo.
And it does tie in, like you said, with his height and like how he comes off to people, like his ascendant.
He had to kind of develop that.
Yeah, there's a trine to his ascendant, so they're working in favor of each other with his Mercury placement and Sun placement and Jupiter all right there, trine his Saturn and 1st house. So he's making it where he's almost restrictive of those things when they come off to people, so he comes off better, like. And the other thing on this grand trine is the North Node in Taurus, which is also like another type of gentle giant type of energy, like Taurus the bull, but also Taurus is so like cozy and comfy, like vibes, So
I love Taurus. So.
It's another like kind of gentle giant thing. So like he has that grand trine going for him, and it makes him more approachable. It makes him more pleasant to people. Even though, and it makes it where this like self-restrictive thing and this like Capricorn Mercury speech and mindset really like kind of are in his favor.
Wow.
Let's see, and another thing with this, let's see, I have so many notes.
You do have a lot of notes. I can't quite read them because I'm upside down, so I'm just gonna kick back.
I do as long as you're on camera.
I'm on camera. I keep making sure I'm on camera and not getting too comfy. And then I keep popping in to just like look at the chart again because it's like I like seeing it when you're talking about it.
Maybe we can one day get it like up on a projector or something.
One day we're gonna have projectors.
I could probably do that like now if I get like a cheap little one. Anyways, I'm gonna start thinking about that, and I'm not gonna be able to focus. All right. So we have another thing with that Grand Trine situation. His Mercury trine, his Mercury in Capricorn makes it where he's able to mentally take on these big tasks, these big like things, like doing a whole bunch of book recordings. Like literally, how Mercury Capricorn is that?
Like, yeah.
That's insane. Like you're literally like you're speaking up a mountain. Like
even reading 500 books. Reading 500 books out loud is a lot of books. Yeah. So
much. And having it be like a goal and like an achievement, like that's totally something.
He got to retire from it. Like if you think that he was like, I feel like I've done a lot. I'm hogging.
That's very good for him. And it's detail oriented with that trine to his Virgo ascendant, where he wants to be detail oriented. It's karmic situation to be that way. It's something that he can't turn away from. Also Saturn there, his whole life structure is based on that Virgo type detail energy. So that's really just how he bases everything in a way. But then his sun sign is a little more flighty, but it is and being a Sagittarius, but it is cusping Capricorn, so it has a little structure on it. Yeah. And then his moon is also more flamboyant, but it's also imprisoning, being in that 12th house, so it's in fantasy oriented. And then he also, you were saying he was doing like the prison, like scheduling and stuff too. And that's just so Virgo.
Yes, it is.
Virgo, Saturn, Mercury, Capricorn. Like it's all, yeah. I thought that seemed like another really good task to put him on. He would do a good job.
I do love tasks as a Virgo rising.
Yeah, like all those like chores, little routine daily
checklists,
things. Yes.
And it feels very accomplished. Like I relate to that aspect of that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Virgo energy, going down that list. So satisfying.
Yeah, that's totally right up his alley, and it brings him further on his life path, his destiny, because they're both, all of that is, it's Grand Trine over to his North Node, his, that Taurus energy he wants more and more of in life. He really just wants to be like, his 9th house Taurus, like wanting to take life's adventure in like a comfy way, like,
I like
it. It's very interesting, and it's a great way to do that with like books and learning and like taking on.
And that's very Sagittarius energy too.
Yeah, with the 9th house, yeah, and and it's a trine over to his sun sign, so it's good for him. I think that his present days seem like they're treating him pretty well.
Yeah, they really do. He's like model prisoner. He like gets trusted to do all these things and.
Making the best of the rest of his life, which I guess good for him.
I mean, what else can he really do? Be miserable? But we all want murderers to be miserable, I think. But that's interesting.
And it's really interesting. I mean, you hear a lot of different things about how people are the rest of their days after being a serial killer. So
right. Well, typically, the thing about it is most of these people are attacking women. There are no women where they are, so there's no one they want to attack. You know what I mean?
That's another thing, like when that lady got triggered.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Except for that one time, there was a lady and he flipped. And yeah, like,
especially he's not really building up a tolerance to women either, being in that environment.
Right, and he's good at socializing with men. He likes police officers. He's not really in a place that's going to make him feel super uncomfortable in that way. So that's really something to think about.
I gotta plug my computer in. Sorry for the brief interruption. Okay. Plug it in.
I almost sang that, and then I was like, "We're gonna get sued." I'm not.
We shouldn't do it.
And now I regret that we didn't sing it in unison.
I already did.
I really.
I know that we could have.
Wouldn't that have been exciting if we both did that at the same time?
I will accept it.
I would have been excited for that.
Okay. All right. So, something else that's interesting with the gentle giant thing being a giant and all, I feel like that really shows on his chart energetically through his 5th house having Jupiter in Capricorn, where like Capricorn is like literally the mountain of, you know, like the mountain goat kind of like working towards these peaks in life. 10th, you know, it's related to the 10th house of midheaven, your success, reaching your achievements and things like that. So, you know, that's already a high peak. It's the highest earth sign. It represents, you know, again with the 10th house, the highest part of the sky, like when you're born. I'm trying to keep it brief, but I'm kind of getting tongue-tied trying to do that. So having this in the 5th house makes it very like an expressive trait, like it's something that is expressed. And then having it trine the ascendant makes it expressed in his physical appearance as well. And making it very grounded. It's even, so I feel like that is tied to his height, personally.
Interesting.
A lot of the physical traits are shown with the 1st house. And having like the ruler of Capricorn right there too just makes it like even stronger in my opinion. Let's see. Oh, and he has a Stallion in Capricorn too. Like it's not like he's got the one thing in Capricorn.
Heavy Cap energy for him. And that feels on
Folus,
brand.
even Folus, which is like extra. Yeah. Very on brand.
Very on brand.
Let's see, what else? Do we want to go over his traumas?
Yes, he has a lot of trauma that we talked about. So I feel like, you know, the mother was huge trauma for him.
So much. Oh my god. All right, so right away, going in with that 12th house Leo moon problem. It's not a great place for this to be hitting, and it's right on that 12th house. Like, it's got squares to the north and south node. So this makes it like if you are writing a story, you know, or you're structuring out a storyline for something, you have like the beginning of the story, and then you go up, and you know conflict arises, and then you hit the climax of the story, and then you go down. So when you have anything squaring the nodes, the past and the future, it literally makes that figure on the chart.
Wow.
So it makes it a strong conflict, a strong like challenge you face in life. It's something that you do go through, but it is something that you will constantly be confronting until you learn how to find like a good solution to it.
Okay.
Like healthier solutions to it. Just depends on how the energy is getting activated and everything. But having that be like the main like story arc of his life, main conflict of his life, it really is telling right on in his 12th house. Also, I thought it was interesting he was the middle child, because I think that also ties into this placement because, well, first of all, like there's squares to the south node in the 3rd house, and like the 3rd house has to do with like siblings and literally like 3 children, but but having the moon be such an expressive Leo placement, but then being restricted in the 12th house, I think that middle child type of thing, syndrome, especially being like the boy who his mother just hated.
The rejected child.
He was the absolutely rejected child. Literally prisoned in the basement.
Right.
His emotions by the mother, which is represented by the moon. So, I mean, if you want to know if people have mom issues, like look at their moon placement, really.
Wow.
And maybe their 4th house, but in their south node in Ceres. But he also has Ceres in this same 12th house Leo placement, and Pluto, which makes everything really harsh and really like transformative and really like hard hitting and intense. Yeah. So, and being in retrograde, it's not like he's he may not be able, it's going to take it longer for him to actually undergo these transformations. So it just seems more like really intense and I can't do anything about it. I don't know what to do about it for extra long. Rather, if it was direct, maybe he would have gotten through some of these issues a little faster. Maybe before he killed people. I don't know. Let's see. You need some coffee.
I did. No, I haven't had coffee in days.
I know.
It's weird. I haven't been drinking coffee. I had a whole nausea thing going on for extended period. So yeah, I do feel more tired than normal. I'm trying.
I have mushroom coffee, and I also have a coupon code for anyone who wants 4 Sigmatic coffee.
I totally want mushroom coffee. I've had it before, and it's so good.
I have it in the kitchen.
Oh, I might have to.
I also have their protein powder, which I haven't tried, but I'm really excited to.
Is it like a jack you up kind?
I don't remember. I mean,
it
like
kind
of because it has it's mushroom and it has other stuff in it too.
Cool, that's interesting.
So like I'm sure it has cordyceps in it, which is like like kind of jack you up, but it's not like caffeine jack you up. It's like a body physical like endurance type thing. So
yeah, let me know how that feels.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Check me out on Instagram if you want to know more about that. I think my code is Eruca 10 for 10% off.
It'll be in the show notes.
For sure.
How about that?
I can do that. Let's see. Back to this. So we have some more things. Next we have the Saturn in the first house. This is already very restrictive of the self, the sense of identity, like anything to do with who you are is really restrictive. It has some squares on it as well to Venus and Chiron, and to Pallas in retrograde. So this ties into a lot of his issues with family and the mother in that way, but it also is with the father, because Saturn is more of the paternal influence, along with the sun tends to be more of a masculine energy. Having it squared these creates a lot of stress and conflict and limitation on his sense of worth and what he finds of worth and his values, personal value system. It puts restriction on relationships. You didn't mention anything about him having relationships.
He didn't have them. He was just awkward around women. He was attracted to women, so I feel like he identified as a straight male.
But his mom thought he was gay. Or thought he would be gay.
If she gave him any sort of affection whatsoever. She was like, that's going to make him very, very gay. I must be horribly mean to him and put him in
But really, like, I can see that because his identity and Saturn are tied together. Is square his Venus, which is right with his Chiron, which is trauma. And, like, maybe if he did a lot of self-healing, maybe he could have a relationship. And then he's got a grand square over to his 7th house from this. And Pallas, which is like more of a strategic like mentality, hard choices in life energy. So it's not really like a romantic situation. Like he doesn't have. I'm not really surprised that he doesn't have. He didn't have like a bunch of relationships or have a prison marriage or a court marriage or whatever.
He's one of our first ones lately that hasn't had some sort of like lots of relationship stuff or like been able to pull off a relationship or been able to or doing the prison marriage thing. And I'm assuming women were not throwing themselves at him and writing him all the letters like they were to somebody like Richard Ramirez or Ted Bundy. Like,
and women trigger him, so like how can you with a woman anyway,
right? And the closest he got,
and then the father thing, I don't know, he's got, maybe he needs like a I just lost the word.
Oh no.
Like someone who identifies like more in the middle, but if they showed any feminine tendencies, they'd probably trigger him. So I don't know.
Okay, so somebody that's a little bit more like gender fluid or gender neutral or more
like
masculine
it need
energy.
Be neutral masculine.
Neutral and masculine, but he's attracted to the feminine exterior, obviously, in a sexual way. So that's what's so interesting.
Or could he only experience sexual gratification through that like power,
like
thing.
that power
so, like,
control. So somebody submissive would be,
and having the control again. It ties in. I'll get into his aggressive stuff in a second, but ties into his Mars placement. I'll wrap up his trauma stuff. Okay.
Okay.
All right, because I see that we've been on here for a minute. Let's see. There's just so much I could say. I feel a little overwhelmed. Anyway, so 5th house, Stallion, and Capricorn. I think I did mention about that. Saturn, stationary 1st house squares. Yep, I was going over that. There is a quincunx also to Saturn, from Saturn to Juno in Aries in the 8th house, which I'm going to come back to, so keep that in mind. This is something interesting. So one thing, there's a lot of different ways to interpret the energies of a zodiac, and all of them are working together all at once, which makes it like really kind of like 4D, 5D, 6D type of like way to kind of try to conceptualize things. Okay. So one of those ways is you can kind of look at it as an age progression thing. So as you go around the chart, you see when he gets to the 3rd and the 4th house, which is where you're developing like your siblings and family, small group dynamics, and you're developing your home and paternal dynamics. This is where we start to encounter problems again, because the 2nd house, it has Neptune, but it's not necessarily like Neptune does have like a square to Mars, so he's already learning that issue with like the fantasy and taking action on it thing I talked about, that conflict. But it gets so much worse when again he starts having the siblings ganging up on him with his mom, and he starts hitting his trauma in life here, and his South Node energy. In the 3rd house, he has South Node and Vesta and Venus in Scorpio. So Scorpio is again that intense energy. It's a callback to his 12th house problems, and it's actually square to his Pluto in Leo in the 12th house. You have this energy. He's really devoted, and this is where he has like his relationships with these people. It's where he learns like relationships and love, and he's devoted to them in a way because they are like his sisters and his family, and like whatever. He's really devoted to that scorpionic energy, which also plays out in how he deals with his problems and how he values himself. What his soul is really tied to is that kind of like liminal spaces, like Scorpio energy. So this vibration of like that dark transformation type death thing is very like ingrained in his soul. But it also makes it where he's devoted to the things that he learned in this early childhood, and it literally is his past with the South Node being here. So this has to do with his siblings and them not treating him well, but they're still his siblings, and then his mom and the trauma of his mother again coming through here. There are aspects over to the moon again in the 12th house, because of course there are.
The sibling stuff's interesting because I think about it like he killed his mom, he killed his grandparents, he didn't kill his siblings.
Yeah, he devoted to them.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and they were, from all accounts, not so much a fan of him because of mom's. And
it also makes me wonder, like close friends of his, maybe he's got the little social groups going. Yeah, it's a comfort zone thing with him. It makes me wonder about his like close friend dynamics, his small groups, like if he chooses friends that kind of pick on him and stuff.
It kind of sounds like he didn't get super close to people, but he was fascinated with cops and wanted to be around them and he kind of stalked them. He feels like very much a follower. Like he feels like a puppy that follows people a little bit. Like with the cops, like I really like them, I really want to be around them, I really want to be like a brotherhood. Them, I want to be friends.
And a show of structure, that Saturn, Capricorn.
Yeah, like he really wanted that and was attracted to it, and he ended up...
They take on tasks like Virgo.
Yeah, so I don't know that he had close friendships or close relationships with anybody, but he did have these superficial social ties that he was, that meant a lot
Which
to
is
him.
like the third house stuff.
He was seeking that because he was going to this specific place because that's
and
where
that stalking type energy is the Scorpio influence on that house.
No, that makes sense.
But it's not ruling that house. It's it's just the majority of the house. So, but if you're using whole house, it is the ruler. So, I'm trying to incorporate both because I've been talking to a lot more people that are using whole house, and I'm like, well, okay.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know much about that.
Or equal house or and things like that. So, I hope I've been saying the right one. I can't remember now. I was going on. Oh, also the peer rejection thing. This is where peer rejection comes in. It's when you're like, as the ages when you're starting to develop that. Also, the South Node and the sisters. You can see on the life path, like the past coming in with the dolls and bringing these like scorpionic themes into that area of his life again, with like the games and the killing the animals and the dolls and all of these really intense death themes of Scorpio, but within the third house area of life, and that being his past and something that that came like naturally to him in the past. And then you see as he progresses along his life path, the North Node being in Taurus in the 9th house, really taking things into like the 3D world, where Taurus is the first Earth sign, taking things into the 3D world, and taking them far, like taking it really far with the 9th house. You know, 9th house Sagittarius, taking things far. So the aggression is kind of shown a little bit there, but also shown with his commitment to it with Juno in Aries. That kind of warrior energy is something he's just like naturally committed to. It's something that he isn't gonna turn away from, as like, that like combative is just part of it, and it's in the 8th house, so that is again the death area of life. He's willing to like be aggressive in that area, and the way this manifests is pretty obvious. There's a square over to his Jupiter, a trine to his moon. There's a quintile to his Pholus, which makes him it's really like a creative aspect, over to Pholus, which is like where he's extra in life, which is in Capricorn. The Capricorn Mars is really, really telling in my opinion, and I think literally having the hammer as the tool and wanting control, like that's just very Capricorn. I'm going to hit you into control. Having the Aries aggression tied in with the aspecting the Capricorn Mars, and Jupiter being that his form of growth and in a way, or like progressing through a situation. Jupiter like progression. Like I mentioned earlier with the fantasy, and then him acting on it and making him more grounded in the long run.
That's the wildest concept.
I heard that coming, like I heard that as I was looking at the chart.
Like major download.
It felt like a message when I heard it.
That feels really spot on now that you say it, but it's a wild thing to kind of conceptualize for a minute, to be like, wow. This was in a way like very healing for him to like do this. It's so awful.
Yeah, and he has Juno trine his Chiron and Venus, and trine the moon. It's another ground trine on his chart, so it's something that is in a way like healing and helpful. But it's also complicated. There's like a lot of other aspects too, but there's so much going on in his chart.
There is a lot going on in his chart. It's kind of everywhere. It's all over the place.
But you guys wanted more chart talk, so
more
here we
charts.
go. There's also a trine to Vesta over. He has wait. What am I looking at? Okay. His Lilith in Pisces is another thing. It's that self-empowerment in fantasy that I mentioned. And it's trying to his Vesta in Scorpio, which is that stuff from his past in the 3rd house that I was talking about, with the dolls and the siblings and the pure rejection and all of that. And let's see, it's also, I said that. I wrote Sun in Sagittarius Stallion, taking wild ride of life as far as possible.
Yep. Accurate.
Let's see. The schizophrenia stuff, generally, and just so you guys know, like, I'm not ever diagnosing anyone with any mental illnesses. I'm not saying that if you have any of these placements that you have schizophrenia. I'm not saying it's like that, vice versa. But when you look at the, I have looked at other schizophrenia charts before.
We've looked at several in this podcast.
I've known people personally with schizophrenia that I've looked at their charts and talked to them about it. So I mean,
Wow.
I'm not saying I know a lot, but it is really fascinating, and so I want to mention it. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for the disclaimer.
You have to, because
you
like
do have
such
to. People.
I really value mental health, and so I just don't want to.
This podcast supports mental health, and we are advocates for that. So.
I go to therapy. Okay. Let's see. So he has Neptune, which is something I like to look at. Neptune in Libra in the second house. So this is something, again, like where it kind of, the seed was planted very young, being in the second house, but also it's tied to like kind of his value system. It makes it where his values are really influenced by the sense of fantasy and ethereal other realms and like dreamy stuff.
Okay.
And really like with him being like trapped in the basement and everything, like this is like, where else did he have to go to turn to? Like he was literally in the shadows. Like Libra is the shadow side. It, you know, when you look at the chart, you have Aries is would be the self or the first house, and then opposite of that would be Libra, just the shadow, the other side. And so you look at the seventh house for the shadow self, which is
I
also.
didn't know that about Libra in general. That's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people like to say like Scorpio is the shadow.
I see. Yeah, my mind immediately went to Scorpio.
But it's just because it's such a dark, depthy thing. It's really not the shadow. It's like literally like anything in the seventh house, the house of Libra, is something that you can't see directly with yourself. It's something that's literally behind you, your shadow.
Wow.
So you have to see those things reflected back like a mirror to you in other people. So he might not be like super aware of the delusions, being in this. Well, actually, sorry, I got a little mixed up with what I was saying. If it was in his seventh house, he might not be aware of the delusions. This is a second house, in Libra. So he probably does have some awareness of this, but it's that shadow energy that needs to be mirrored back type of energy. It's the opposite of ego. Aries is ego. Libra is opposite of that. So it's the opposition of the ego. Those two. So having it in Libra brings that influence with it. But I thought that was really interesting, making it where he's kind of like he really values kind of losing himself in the fantasy. And he has the worldview of also like being a mediator, kind of balancing pleasantries type thing. So it can also tie in with him being the gentle giant. That's part of his worldview, or what he hopes aspires to be his dream for his views. That's like what he values in the world in a way. And then having this sextile Pluto ties in again with this 12th house situation. It is quintile his Mercury, which makes it him think, or his sun sign, which makes him see himself in this world like it's a creative expression of the self. If that makes sense.
Yeah. That makes sense to me anyway.
Mars square, so it creates that conflict with fantasy and taking action and grounding and all that, like I said. There's a quincunx to Lilith, so it's bound to that Lilith energy, that self-empowerment energy. So it's like a direct line kind of over to that, like an unbreakable chain line. So having all this tie into schizophrenia, it creates like this really weird dynamic with his mind and his like fantasy.
So
fantasies.
interesting.
I tried to talk about Mercury. I had that. Very detail oriented was the next thing on my notes, which we talked about. He has Virgo rising, Virgo Saturn, and he has his 6th house, which is the house of Virgo, in Aquarius, which is another very planner type energy, like big picture, like able to, it's another like thinking, intellectual type of sign. So I think you can see on this where he goes through these processes of getting triggered and being in the fantasy, and especially with all the isolation and stuff, emotionally isolated, his identity is isolated and belittled, and like there's so much on here.
Fantasy is like part of his like coping skill and survival mechanism for all that time in isolation. Like that,
and it becomes like the true thing he values because of that. So he gets triggered and has the fantasy, and then he can get like really like I don't want to say explosive, expressive kind of word, and take action on it, and kind of a cycle.
He did have a cycle. It is crazy that he did everything he did in 8 months. I mean, aside from the grandparents, like.
Yeah, because I don't think it's not something that he wasn't like really wanting to do it. Like obviously he wanted to do it, but it was a confliction type thing.
It was like,
but he felt pushed by, not that anyone made him do it or anything, but he felt like he had to get to a certain point.
He had to ground himself.
A breaking point. He had to reach a breaking point to do it, is what I'm trying to say.
It's crazy.
I think the chart is really interesting. I would love for you guys to go look at it.
It's one of the more like well-round, like there's stuff going on kind of everywhere. It's not as one-sided as like except for this Leo Virgo area and the Sagittarius Capricorn area, which you can tell are very strong areas of his life. They do come through very strong. So. Yeah. He's an interesting kind of guy, and he's still alive. So, like, if you wanted to write him a letter, you probably could.
When he dies, we can do a death chart.
That'll be interesting. We'll have to.
He's getting old. So.
Yeah, I don't know how old he is today. When he's born
1948.
So he's gonna be 73. 73, right?
Checking. Yeah, good math.
And I'm not great in my mind math. Mental math, head math. What do you call it when you do
mental math? Maybe.
That didn't sound right at all.
Yeah, I can do it. I just don't enjoy it.
I don't know quite.
I don't like to do it.
Yeah, I don't like doing math without a calculator or ever.
I have math anxiety. I read an article on math anxiety. You guys should read it.
Sounds interesting. I will read it. Send me the article. Send it to all of us. Put it in the show notes. But that's Ed Kemper, you guys. Thank you all for being here, for joining us again this week. Again, please like, follow, subscribe, give us a rating. 5 stars would be amazing. If you feel we have earned it, we do want to earn it.
Let us know what you think about. We did 50 minutes of astrology.
Hell yeah.
So let me know what you think of the extra astrology time. Yeah. I feel like I started repeating stuff, but let me know.
I love it. I think you did great. So yeah, if you want extra content, you can join our Patreon. Follow us, find us in all the places. So thank you guys again for being here. We got a fun surprise for the next episode. We're kind of going to go...
It's going to be good.
It's going to be a fun one. It's a little bit less crime and more dark alignment kind of thing that happens. So pretty pumped for the next episode. So don't miss it. Hit that bell. Fucking subscribe and stuff. So chart all the bitches in your life. Continue to love yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Bye.